Welcome to the Dr. Mudgil podcast. This is episode 123. We are just wrapping up March here. April is soon upon us. Sweet 16 of March Madness starts tonight, so it's very exciting. It's been a great tournament so far. Lots of upsets, lots of excitement, lots of domination by the top seeds. But the show goes on this weekend. Excited to watch some of that. It's a rainy day here in New York. I think it's going to actually rain through tomorrow, but hopefully we got a nice weekend. Going to try to sneak out there for a little bit of golf on Saturday. I haven't swung a club in, since last summer, but hopefully I hit them long and straight. This podcast is, it's going to be kind of like a thoughts of the week style podcast. This is actually something I was thinking about a couple of weeks ago that I wanted to talk about, but I got kind of sidetracked with some other content that kind of pushed this off to the side. But a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if I was watching something while I was working out. I think I actually was. I think that there was a reporter, his name was Dan Harris, who was on TV. I think he was talking about his podcast or something. I forget exactly what the nature of the content was, but the point is he actually wrote a book called 10% Happier many moons ago. And it actually, it's a really, really interesting story. So he is a reporter. I think he actually retired, and now he just devotes his time to his podcast, etc. But he's a reporter for ABC, and in 2004, he had a panic attack while he was on air. And it was a life-transforming experience for him. And, he really kind of dove into, mindfulness and meditation, as tools to overcome anxiety and stress and depression and all those sorts of things. And, it was so transformative that he ended up writing a book called 10% Happier, where he basically catalogs his experience, this life transformative event, and the steps he took, namely using mindfulness and meditation to overcome, the anxiety that was paralyzing him. And, I thought it was a really interesting concept. It's kind of similar. I always talk about getting your daily win no matter what, setting a goal and getting your daily win every day no matter what. So you move a small step incrementally, daily towards your goal. Goals aren't made, you don't achieve them overnight. It takes months, years, sometimes many years to achieve whatever your goal may be. But as long as you're, purposefully getting your daily win, those small wins add up big over time. His concept is actually very, very similar to this, and I actually thought it was fascinating, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So, when he says 10% happier, the basic premise of that is that, using mindfulness and meditation, you can get at least 10% happier. But the real point of it is, at least my takeaway from it is that, that 10% compounds, so, every year, that you're using mindfulness and meditation or whatever tools you may use, whatever you're trying to do to improve yourself, that compounds year after year. So if you think about it, it's kind of like compound interest, right? You put $100 in a bank and say you're getting 10% interest. I know it's very high, but just for argument's sake, so you're getting 10% interest. That next year you have $110, and that $110 then gets 10% interest, and then the following year you have $121, and then that $121 gets 10% interest, and the following year you have $134.10. And then that $134.10 sits in the bank and collects 10% interest. Then you have $147.51. And then that $147.51 sits in the bank for another year. And then at the end of that year, you have $164.53. So 5 years, you basically increased that $100 by 64%. But that's, it's their 10% increments each year that compound. And it's kind of similar to what this book is about. Every year that you devote to, in his case, practicing mindfulness and meditation, you got 10% happier, right? But that 10% compounds, right? So, every year he's actually getting more and more, happy, I should say, or less anxious and less stressed. And, I thought it was such a great way to look at setting any goal and achieving whatever any goal you have may be. You're not going to, get that, like the example I just gave, you're not going to have a 64% growth in 1 year, but in 5 years, it's possible, So as long as you're trusting the process, and this, like I said, this applies to anything. It applies to, like in Dan Harris's case, relieving anxiety, reducing stress, using mindfulness and meditation. You can use this to getting better at an instrument. You're going to, if you use purposeful practice and you're improving at like, a 10% clip every year, that 10% compounds. And, in 5 years, you might be 64% better than you are, when you first started. Golf, same sort of thing. I talk about in my book, about how I was practicing just like aimlessly when I first started playing golf. And I finally got the help of a pro and, was really, changed my practice. It was kind of from, bad busy to good busy. I was, my practice was purposeful. I was actually practicing less, hitting less balls, but I was doing it in a very purposeful way. So I was able to actually get better. I mean, I'm still a terrible golfer, but I was able to get better than I was. But, it's the same sort of thing. Like those improvements, I stopped practicing many years ago, but those improvements do compound. So if you want to get better at golf, as long as you're employing purposeful practice and, you're not just like aimlessly just hacking away at balls like I was doing when I first started playing, you can get 10% better every year. And that 10% compounds year after year after year. You're not gonna, when professional golfers, before they were professionals, when they started playing golf, they weren't like, they were shanking balls like everybody else, but they had natural talent and they honed that talent using purposeful practice. Every year when they were like little kids, got better and better and better until, they're just amazing golfers now. If you want to get fit, the same sort of thing. You're not gonna, go from being, in my case, a scrawny, skinny fat to, putting on some muscle and having a physique that I can be proud of in months or even in a year. It's been like, 12 year journey for me to transform myself. And, every year I try to get 10% better, but those results compound. Like the gains I made in the first few years compared to the gains I've made in the last few years, it's very, very different. Like the gains I make now are much more significant because I'm working with, a much better machine. I have more muscle mass in my body, less body fat. I'm much more tuned in with my nutrition. And that 10% every year that I get better, it's bigger. That chunk is bigger every year. It's kind of like the example of compounding money. Every year, that 10% is a larger amount. So the gains I make every year, the 10% gain I may make every year, 5% gain, whatever it is, it's bigger than it was during year one. So that's a very powerful thing to think about. I think it's actually a very motivating thing to think about, because sometimes it can just seem so daunting. Whatever your goal may be, I'm never going to get there. Applies to academics, applies to studying for a test, preparing for the SATs or ACTs, which my daughter is doing now. It's plugging away, trying to get 10% better. If you're preparing for a test every week, every month, whatever it is, but it makes a goal achievable because you're having these like small digestible intervals where you're making small incremental improvements. And those small incremental improvements, not only do they add up over time, but the improvements you make from week to week or month to month or year to year, you take bigger strides, with each, as your foundation gets stronger and stronger, the strides you make or the gains you make are larger and larger. And that's a very powerful concept. I think it's a very empowering concept. So with that, I hope you have a greater appreciation, thanks to Dan Harris, for the power of, compounding the success you achieve on your way to your goal. Like I said, each year, each week, each month, each year, the gains you're going to make are going to be greater as long as everything you're doing is purposeful and with good intent than you did, initially. And, that's something that I think is very motivating and inspiring. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful, restful weekend and are just ready to crush and dominate the week ahead. Let's get it.